are in chapter 23 of the book of Shmuel Beis, and we just got up to the discussion of who David's warriors were. And some of the names we actually don't even know, but they were his big warriors. And yesterday we touched upon why it doesn't say Yoav here. Yoav is the one who we would think could be mentioned. And yesterday we said that Yoav either is obvious that he was his great warrior, or it's unnecessary to mention him, or it's below his dignity because he was the greatest of the great. Or according to another opinion, actually it is mentioned, just not by his regular name, but by a different name. And now we're going to go through them. So we're in verse 8. Again, we're chapter 23 of verse 8. And we're going to go through some of these names of the warriors and the description that it gives. So in verse 8, it says, these are the names of David's warriors. And it says, one who sat in the assembly, a sagacious man, head of the captains, he is Adino the Etznite. And that is in the Hebrew, Adinoi Ha'etzni, and who stood over 800 corpses at one time. Now, what does that mean? So it means he killed all of them. And the simple reading of the verse is that the verse is referring to Adino, who was sat in the assembly, a sagacious man, like a sage, head of the captains. And so it was referring to him. But there is a way of reading it, David's warriors, that David was all of these titles. And interesting, if you look in, sometimes they have like endorsements in Hebrew books. You get a big rabbi to endorse your book. If you write a book, you want someone to give a haskama, an approbation. And they write often the words like this, like it says in verse 8, Yoshev Basheves Tach Gemoini, Roish Hashalishi. Sometimes you'll see such a term. Basically, someone who studied hard, he sat in the assembly with the other great rabbis, he did his they did his homework, so to speak. He studied and was a sage and was amongst sages. And anyway, so it mentions here that one of the warriors of David was this person called Adino. Now, Adino we never heard of. So either he is a person, Adino Ha'etzni, that's his name. Maybe from a place called Etzni, maybe, or Oitzen, something, the word Ha'etzni, the Etzniite, that doesn't exactly tell us what that means, but maybe it was a place. Now, it could also be, as I mentioned yesterday, it might refer to Yoav. This might be Yoav. Again, Yoav is going to be missing from these names, so this might be the name given to Yoav. It might be a sort of like a nickname for Yoav. And the reason of Adino is because he was very humble. And Ha'etzni would be that he was a very powerful warrior, strong like wood, solid like wood. And so he was like an eitz, didn't bend. He was a warrior, a real warrior. So anyway, so that could be referring to Yoav. It could also be referring to David. There is a translation that it's referring to David, that that David was these things, that David was Adino Ha'etzni. It's it's referring to David HaMelech as well, who's also that they were very humble when they learned Torah. They were humble, and they were like a strong wood when they would fight their wars. Now, the understanding of Yoshe Bashevas Tachkemaini, that he sat in the assembly, would generally mean that he, at least Rashi brings it, that he was part of the Sanhedrin. And so these are the different. So again, we have three translations here now. It's either he's a person, Adino, or it's Yoav, or it's David. Now we have a verse. Now he was over 800 corpses, which basically means that he killed 800 Plishtim, or the enemy soldiers, in one shot, in one battle, in one war. Susan, do you have a question?
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to say, in another part of this same earlier, there's a number 800, that David killed 800, that it referred. Is this another 800 men, or was that referring to another time? In other words, I remember that we had talked about David killed 800 men by himself. Previously.
So if it's referring to David, it's possible that it's going back on that story, because here we're not really mentioning, we're not emphasizing the story here as much as we're just emphasizing the warrior.
Yeah.
You know, the greatness of
and he was that humble that he didn't want to have his name repeated so many times.
So it doesn't say it exactly like that. That's your own addition. Very nice thought. But it emphasizes the it doesn't explain to us why it's not mentioning his name. I know, in other words, the book was written with divine inspiration, so it's not like he's mixing in his own interests in should his name be there or not. It's all from Hashem. But so we don't know exactly why it would mention this name Adino. I mean, if it's talking about Yoav, so it wants to tell us about Yoav a little, that he had a certain humility that you don't really see in the rest of the book. So maybe it's emphasizing that. Adino is from the word adin, which is like Adel, maybe. Yes, Ben.
Yeah,
Ben.
I want to say that it says that these are the heroes of King David. So it wouldn't include King David in that pasuk. So the 800 people are not killed by David, they're killed by his heroes.
So there definitely are translations that follow what you are saying, Ben, but there's also a translation that it could refer to David, and if it does refer to David, it would mean that it's going to start talking about the heroes afterwards. These are David's heroes, and David is the person who's a great warrior, and he was the Adinoi Ha'etzni, he was the Sheva Yoshev Shevas Tachkemaini, he was this. So it could be that it's pushing off the list till the next verse. You know what I'm saying, Ben? That's a way of translating it.
Yeah, but it looks like he has. It looks like he has 3 heroes. Adino is just at 1/3 of it. Rosh Hashaloshi, he's the head of a third, and and uh, and they'll be talking about two more, and they say Adino Atzeni. So they're talking about Adino is the Atzeni, not King David.
So the question that you're wondering is, where do you come up with 3 if it follows if Adino is, if David is Adino? That's what you're asking.
No, I'm saying Adino is probably 1/3 of the Giborim.
Okay. Anyway, let's see how it.
So maybe there is 2 more.
So let's see. So we have in verse 8, we've got this person called Adino, who was definitely a very strong and powerful warrior. And now in verse 9, it mentions another person who we've never heard of. After him was Elazar, the son of Doidoi, the son of, it means the son of Achoichi, but the commentaries say that it means he was from the family of Achoichi. He was among the 3 mighty men who were with David. And when they fought defiantly against the Plishtim who had gathered there for war, and the men of Israel ran off. So there's a story here that the Jewish people ran off and left some of the left a few warriors fighting the entire Plishtim army. The men of Israel ran off, and he rose up and struck the Plishtim until his hand tired, and his hand stuck to the sword. And Hashem performed a great salvation that day. The people returned after him only to strip the corpses, which basically means he did the war. They just came afterwards to help him, take the clothing and all the booty. And he actually was stuck. He fought this war, this Elazar ben Doida. Now, it says his hand was stuck to the sword. It either means because of the amount of blood that was on the sword caused his hand to stick to it. In other words, it coagulated, and it became so sticky that his hand it was stuck to the sword. Or it could mean that because of the pressure that he had his hand on put the pressure of his muscle on the sword, that he couldn't relax it. It became numb, like he couldn't move it. In any event, Hashem performed a great salvation that day, and he basically struck the entire people of the Plishtim. It seems together with the other two mighty men. Now, Rashi says, when it says 3, it means the Ma'ulim, the greatest of the strong, of the mighty ones. He was amongst the greatest. So I'm not sure if Rashi is emphasizing that maybe it doesn't necessarily mean 3 specifically, or does it mean 3 and they were the greatest? It could be that Rashi's just saying Shloisha Hagiborim is more the greatest of the strong ones, or it could mean that he's translating it as literally as 3, and these were just the greatest ones. And the verse continues and says that after him was Shammah, the son of Agay. Shammah, the son of Agay. That's how that's read. I know it doesn't look like Agay in the English, but it's Shammah, the son of Agay. and his description is called Harari.
Colors.
Harari is from the mountain. Let me just mute everyone here.
Age.
So it's Harari means he's from the mountain, and so this Shama, interestingly enough, it doesn't mention his name in the book of Divrei Hayamim, where it talks about the chronicles of and it goes over a lot of the same things that it mentions here. It leaves him out, leaves his name out, I should say. Now, what does it say about him? From the Plishtim had gathered, we're in verse 11, this Shama ben Agay Harari, the Plishtim had gathered into a battalion where there was a portion of the field full of lentils, and the people fled from the Plishtim. So he stood in the middle of the portion and rescued it, and slayed the Plishtim, and Hashem performed a great salvation. So here again, we have someone who was sort of stuck when everyone else ran away. And the Jewish people were nervous. They fled, and he stood there and he fought the Plishtim and rescued this field of lentils. Now, and Hashem made this great salvation. It's called a Shua Gedolah, a great salvation. Just like it said in verse 10, Shua Gedolah, by Yoimahu. It was a great salvation on that day. So here we have Elazar, the son of Doidai, and Shama, the son of Agay. And these were great warriors for David HaMelech. Now, it's also interesting in the book of Chronicles, it mentions that it wasn't a field of lentils, but it actually was a field of barley. So the commentaries try to figure out, and the Gemara itself talks about this. What exactly? Why is there? It comes up with an explanation of why there is this discrepancy. That one place it says barley, and the other place it says lentils. According to the Talmud, it has a whole interpretation there. How David HaMelech had a question, a halachic question, and he wanted to know about paying back one with the other. If one of them is the Jewish people's field, and he wants to feed it to his animals and pay the Jewish people back with the field from the enemy, can he do that? Can he steal in the time of war and use and then pay back from the other field? Yeah, comes up with a few interpretations of what exactly was David's question, and that's why there's two fields, because there were actually two fields there. That's one way of interpreting that there actually were two fields there, and that's why in the book of Shmuel it mentions the field of Adoshim, which means lentils, and in the book of Divrei Hayamim, Chronicles, it mentions the field of barley. Now, we're in verse 12, that it says, so he stood in the middle. Oh, we finished verse 12, and we're up to verse 13. Now, it's interesting. It says that the Plishtim gathered together in a battalion. In the Hebrew is the lechaya. So the Rashi tells us that when you gather together in a group of soldiers, a gudud, a troop, troops, they're called chayas. Why? Because they're like wild animals. They're, the Plishtim's group of their troops are called, that's a term that they could be called a chaya. At least that's one way of interpreting it. Rashi explains it that way. Now, the verse that we're up to, verse
Can
13.
I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
In the footnote, it says that Rashi did that interpretation. Then after the word Rashi, it says Ralbag. Who is that? Is that his last name or I don't
No, there's another commentary called the Ralbag.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Okay. So there are other interpretations, Chaya, that it means could mean sustenance, and the Plishtim, they used to do this is they would kill the owner and steal the sustenance. And the truth of the matter is, this is an issue even today. You have in the many of the areas, you have the Arabs taking advantage of the fact that Israel doesn't protect so much the farmers, and a lot of times the Arabs steal they set it on fire, they steal the produce, and they also they've killed a number of times the farmers, and which is a big issue in Eretz Yisrael, why the government sort of is very relaxed in enforcing protection for the the Jewish people that live in these areas that have farms. But that's the way the Plishtim used to do things, is they would basically destroy our produce, and that would cause the Jewish people to need to be under their jurisdiction, because we basically we would give up. We have no way of providing produce for everyone. If they destroy all of our produce, then we sort of had to allow them to take over, and okay, you people be in charge. We have no choice. So that is an issue even today, and that was their trick of doing things in those days. Yes.
Yeah, I changed my iPad so it's not scratchy when I'm talking. But
thank you.
But I wanted to say we lived about a mile and a quarter from the Jordanian border, from a big town. So our farm, and our neighbors lost a few of their cattle, and a couple lost their cars to them. They would come at night and grab what they can and run over the border. They took the car and would speed over the border. So you cannot protect for that. We had our own, we each took turns to guard at night, but you're on one side of the farm and they're on the other side. What are you going to do? So I don't think Israel is doing a bad job. They just cannot protect each meter, at night.
My brother was a sharpshooter, and when they were on the kibbutz Hestiva, he would guard at night.
Yeah, the farmers do the same thing. Yeah.
Well, it was a real PAIN. That's what he told me anyway.
Okay, thank you, Ben, for giving us a little more understanding of the situation and where they have these issues. But I don't know. I would think that there must be a way.
I saw them in our yard twice with guns. But when they saw me coming with a car, they ran off.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Too bad you didn't have a gun.
My father had in the house. I ran into the house, but
right.
Actually, he had a British machine gun in the window. All he had to do is open the window and use it.
Okay, so anyway, we're in verse 13. Thank you, Ben, for mentioning that. Once 3 men who were officers over the 30 men went down and came to David at harvest to the cave of Adullam, and a Plishtim raiding party was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. So this happened by the cave of Adullam, which is a place that we once read about, we once learned about. Adullam was the place where David HaMelech, after he had to pretend when he was on the enemy territory by Goliath's brother Achish, David mistakenly went into that area, and they brought him to the king, and they said, "We have David." And David was in a very scary situation. He had to pretend that he was crazy, and by doing that, he was able to convince them that he's not David. David, he acted so. What?
He said, "The David b'shanaisa is
Tamei, right?" So he acted so crazy. They said, "This can't be him. You're bringing me someone from the mental institution that wandered off. This can't be David." So they said, "Send him back. I have enough problems." He had a wife with some mental issues and a daughter with some mental issues, and so he said, "We don't need more mental mentally challenged people in our country. Send them back to the Jews." So So then David went to Adullam, and that's when 400 people came with him, and he was running away from Shaul, and he was in Adullam. So it could be that this is referring to that time. Anyway, so it was in Adullam, and the Plishtim were right nearby. And David was then in a stronghold, and there was a Plishtim garrison in Beis Lechem. And David had a craving, and he said, "If only someone could give me water to drink from the well of Beis Lechem, which is in the city gate." So you have to understand, this is life and death over here. Going into the enemy territory is extremely dangerous. So commentaries say he couldn't have told them, "If someone could please go there and get me some water to drink from the well of Beis Lechem." I mean, that's not exactly a very smart move. It's extremely dangerous and a huge potential of being killed. So they say that he must have just said this to himself, thinking, "Oh, if only I could have that," but not expecting anyone to get him this water. And so the three mighty men broke into the camp of the Plishtim and drew water from the well of Beis Lechem, which is at the gate, and they carried it and brought it to David. But he refused to drink it, and he poured it out unto Hashem, meaning he made a libation as a gift to Hashem, this water that was attained by tremendous self-sacrifice, which deserves an interpretation of exactly what happened here. On a very simple level, just reading it on the surface level, it seems that David did not expect them to go and get it. They got him water, and then he was like, "What? You risked your life to get this water? I don't want to, drink such water that was attained through a miracle." This deserves, with water from self-sacrifice, this deserves to be given to Hashem. Such a unique type of water. We should pour it out to Hashem. And the commentaries mention that here we're dealing with a time that before the Beis Hamikdash was built, and he was allowed to build an altar. So he either made an altar there, according to one commentary. Other commentaries say he brought it to a different altar, but you were allowed to have altars that were not in the place of the Beis Hamikdash. They had personal altars, and he poured this water on the altar, at least according to some. There is another interpretation here that's based on the Talmudic, that is let me just mute everyone here. 1 second.
Rabbi?
Yeah, there's some noise.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
This recalls to mind this idea of not wanting to use up one's credit. Could it possibly be that he poured the water out, which might seemingly seem irrational if he's that thirsty, except for the fact that if it was attained at such sacrifice, was he afraid to be using up credit, so to speak, for like, that could impact on his, Olam Haba?
Interesting point. Let me just mute everyone. I was thinking the same, and interesting, a very interesting thought that you come up with. I had because there's a story in the Talmud about that, where he sort of like got something through a mirror. A man got something through a miracle, a great rabbi, and he didn't want to take it because he said this will take away from our world to come. And so it does seem to have a similar idea, but what I was going to bring from the Talmud is a different story, and that is that David had a question, a halachic question. When it says he wanted water, it means he wanted Torah from the base in Beis Lechem. They had a Sanhedrin, and he had a question that he wanted answered, and so they brought him water. Means they went and brought the question to Beis Lechem and brought back an answer. And this was this question that I mentioned earlier about the lentil field and the barley field, and about taking food for his animals and from stuff that's not his. It was owned by Jewish people, but the Plishtim were on top of it, or he was saving his life, and he was saving his life from the with other people's property, and possibly he wanted to know if he would be obligated in repaying what he takes. Of course, you're allowed to save your life, but will he be responsible to repay it back afterwards, even though he was allowed to do it? So different ways of interpreting the question, but the bottom line is that when they brought back the answer from the Sanhedrin, that was the group of rabbis. He got back his answer. What ended up happening was he didn't want to publicize this answer, because it was brought about from someone who did something that he risked his life in order to get this answer. And when you risk your life to get such an answer, you don't repeat such a teaching. And there's such a Talmudic statement for such a thing. But I'm going to stop here and hand over the mic to Rabbi Wernick to be continued.